Hello and good day, everyone. My name is Darlena Birch, MBA, RDN, and most importantly, public health dietitian. Welcome to my kitchen, aka Darlena's Kitchen, where I talk about the science behind nutrition, one, because I'm a dietitian, and two, because I was forced into a chemistry minor. But who's bitter? Not me. All views expressed on my channel are my own and do not represent the opinions of any entity with which I have been, am now, or will be affiliated. For my next few episodes, I'm going to pay specific attention to vitamins and minerals so that you, the viewer, can understand why these individual nutrients are so vital for human health. So let's talk about vitamin D. Vitamin D, also referred to as calciferol, is a fat-soluble vitamin that is naturally present in a few foods, added to others, and available as a dietary supplement. It's also produced endogenously, which means in your body, when ultraviolet rays from sunlight strike the skin and trigger vitamin D synthesis. Vitamin D obtained from sun exposure, foods, and supplements is biologically inert and must undergo 2 hydroxylations in the body for activation. The first hydroxylation, which occurs in the liver, converts vitamin D to 25-hydroxyvitamin D, also known as calcidiol. The second hydroxylation occurs primarily in the kidney and forms the physiologically active 1,25-dihydroxyvitamin D, also known as calcitriol. Vitamin D promotes calcium absorption in the gut and maintains adequate serum calcium and phosphate concentrations to enable normal bone mineralization and to prevent hypocalcemic tetany, which is the involuntary contraction of muscles leading to cramps and spasms. It's also needed for bone growth and bone remodeling by osteoblasts and osteoclasts. Without sufficient vitamin D, bones can become thin, brittle, or misshapen. Vitamin D sufficiency prevents rickets in children and osteomalacia in adults. Together with calcium, vitamin D also protects older adults from osteoporosis. Vitamin D has other roles in the body, including reduction of inflammation as well as modulation of processes such as cell growth, neuromuscular and immune function, and glucose metabolism. Many genes encoding proteins that regulate cell proliferation, differentiation, and apoptosis are modulated in part by vitamin D. In foods and dietary supplements, vitamin D has 2 main forms, D2 known as ergocalciferol and D3 known as cholecalciferol. These 2 forms differ chemically only in their side chain structures, but both forms are well absorbed in the small intestines. Few foods naturally contain vitamin D. The flesh of fatty fish such as trout, salmon, tuna, and mackerel, and fish liver oils are among the best sources. An animal's diet affects the amount of vitamin D in its tissues, so beef liver, cheese, and egg yolks have small amounts of vitamin D, primarily in the form of vitamin D3 and its metabolite. Mushrooms provide variable amounts of vitamin D2, and some mushrooms available on the market have actually been treated with UV light to increase the levels of vitamin D2. In addition, the Food and Drug Administration has approved UV-treated mushroom powder as a food additive for use as a source of vitamin D2 in food products. Now I'm going to transition over to vitamin D deficiency. Vitamin D deficiency can lead to osteomalacia and rickets in children and osteomalacia in adults. Osteomalacia is the softening of the bones, typically through a deficiency of vitamin D or calcium. Vitamin D deficiency is a global public health issue. About 1 billion people worldwide have vitamin D deficiency, while 50% of the population has vitamin D insufficiency. The prevalence of patients with vitamin D deficiency is highest in the elderly, obese patients, nursing home residents, and hospitalized patients. In the United States, about 50 to 60% of nursing home residents and hospitalized patients have vitamin D deficiency. Vitamin D deficiency may be related to populations who have higher skin melanin content and who use extensive skin coverage, particularly in Middle Eastern countries. In the United States, 47% of African American infants and 56% of Caucasian infants have vitamin D deficiency, while over 90% of infants in Iran, Turkey, and India have vitamin D deficiency. In the adult population, 35% of adults in the US are vitamin D deficient, whereas over 80% of adults in Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh are vitamin D deficient. In the US, 61% of the elderly population is vitamin D deficient, whereas 90% in Turkey, 96% in India, 72% in Pakistan, and 67% in Iran were all vitamin D deficient. Now, the fortification of milk in the 1930s was effective in eradicating rickets in the world. However, subclinical vitamin D deficiency is still widely prevalent in both developed and developing countries, with a worldwide prevalence of up to 1 billion. Subclinical vitamin D deficiency is associated with osteoporosis, increased risk of falls, and fragility fractures. Many conflicting recent studies are now showing an association between vitamin D deficiency and cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, autoimmune disease, and depression. I actually recently learned that I was vitamin D deficient when I went in for my annual exam with my doctor, and I asked them to test my vitamin D levels. I've since been taking a multivitamin with vitamin D in it to bring up those numbers. Now, vitamin D deficiency can result from several causes. The first is decreased dietary intake and/or absorption. Certain malabsorption syndromes such as celiac disease, short bowel syndrome, gastric bypass, inflammatory bowel disease, chronic pancreatic insufficiency, and cystic fibrosis may lead to vitamin D deficiency. Lower vitamin D intake orally is more prevalent in the elderly population. The second is decrease sun exposure. About 50 to 90% of vitamin D is absorbed through the skin via sunlight, while the rest comes from the diet. 20 minutes of sunshine daily with over 40% of skin exposed is required to prevent vitamin D deficiency. Cutaneous synthesis of vitamin D declines with aging. Dark-skinned people have less cutaneous vitamin D synthesis. Decreased exposure to the sun, as seen in individuals who are institutionalized or have prolonged hospitalizations, can lead to vitamin D deficiency. Effective sun exposure is decreased in individuals who use sunscreen consistently. The third is decreased endogenous synthesis. Individuals with chronic liver disease such as cirrhosis can have defective 25-hydroxylation, leading to deficiency of active vitamin D. The fourth cause can be increased hepatic catabolism. Medications such as phenobarbital, carbamazepine, dexamethasone, nifedipine, spironolactone, clotrimazole, and rifampin induce hepatic P450 enzymes which activate degradation of vitamin D. The fifth cause is end organ resistance. End organ resistance to vitamin D can be seen in hereditary vitamin D resistant rickets. Now, I've thrown up on the board the chart that shows you the daily recommended intakes for vitamin D across genders and age groups. So please feel free to take a look at it just to know where you are on the chart. Thank you for joining me today. If you like what you see, please smash the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And remember, you're your own best advocate. Feed your body well, nourish your soul, nurture your mind, and nutrify your spirit. Remain true to yourself and never forget that every second forward is another opportunity to be a better version of your past self.